Hello, I'm Essay, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin.
The intellectual landscape of 1958 presented a fascinating confluence of anxieties and ambitions. In the austere corridors of postwar reconstruction and the burgeoning complexities of the Cold War, the machinery of the state and the corporation grew to an unprecedented scale. It was into this environment that Cyril Parkinson, a naval historian with a keen eye for bureaucratic absurdity, launched his elegant piece of satire, Parkinson's Law, the book's central axiom, that work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion, became an instant cultural touchstone, a witty and cynical diagnosis of organizational inefficiency that resonated with a public increasingly entangled in administrative procedure. Yet, in that same year, this piece of popular wisdom found itself the subject of an entirely different kind of scrutiny. Patrick Maynard Stuart Blackett, a Nobel laureate in physics and the formidable architect of British operational research, took the stage to deliver his presidential address to the British Association for the Advancement of Science. Blackett, a man whose entire career was dedicated to imposing mathematical rationality upon the chaos of human affairs, saw something more in Parkinson's humorous maxim. His address, Technology and World Advancement, represents a remarkable intellectual moment, the co-option of a literary satire by the unyielding logic of quantitative science. Blackett's purpose was to seize upon Parkinson's law, strip it of its cynicism, and reforge it as a treatable symptom within a larger system. He sought to demonstrate that the very administrative diseases Parkinson lampooned could be diagnosed and cured by the rigorous application of scientific method, thereby validating his own technocratic vision for global progress. This essay will explore Blackett's profound and calculating engagement with Parkinson's law, revealing it as a strategic maneuver to champion the cause of operational, research and scientific planning as the essential tools for shaping a modern war. To fully appreciate the significance of Blackett's intervention, one must first understand the contrasting worlds from which these two ideas emerged. Parkinson's law was born of direct, lived experience within the British civil service, an environment where empirical observation was anecdotal and conclusions were drawn with literary flair. His arguments were built on plausible, almost fictionalized case studies, the inexplicable growth of the colonial office as the empire itself vanished, or the inverse relationship between the number of ships in the Royal Navy and the number of Admiralty officials required to administer them. His secondary principle, the law of triviality, which states that the time spent on any item of an agenda will be in inverse proportion to the sum of money involved, further painted a picture of human organizations governed by psychological quirks and perverse incentives. Parkinson's work was a critique from within, a knowing wink to anyone who had ever sat in a pointless meeting or filled out a form in triplicate. Its power lay in its relatability and its profound skepticism about the inherent rationality of large institutions. It offered a diagnosis that was amusing and cathartic, providing little in the way of a prescription beyond a weary sigh of recognition. Patrick Blackett inhabited an intellectual universe that was the philosophical antithesis of Parkinson's. A physicist of the highest caliber, Blackett's defining contribution outside the laboratory was the systematization of operational research, or, during the Second World War, leading a group of scientists affectionately known as Blackett's Circus, he applied statistical analysis and mathematical modeling to pressing military problems, from optimizing the depth settings of anti-submarine depth charges to determining the most effective size for transatlantic convoys. The foundational belief of all was that any complex system, where a naval campaign or an industrial supply chain, could be understood, modeled and ultimately optimized through quantitative analysis. Where Parkinson saw irrational human foibles, Blackett saw measurable variables and solvable equations. His worldview was one of profound scientific optimism, a conviction that the same logical rigor that had unlocked the secrets of the atom could be harnessed to direct the course of human society toward more efficient and equitable outcomes. His objective was the elimination of waste and the maximization of effect, a goal diametrically opposed to the institutional entropy Parkinson ascribed with such relish. It was in his 1958 presidential address that Blackett orchestrated the direct confrontation of these two worldviews. The speech itself was a grand statement of his political and scientific philosophy, delivered against a tense backdrop of the Cold War. Blackett was deeply concerned with the gap between the developed and underdeveloped nations, arguing that the West had a moral and strategic imperative to fund massive technological and industrial growth in Asia and Africa. He saw this as a practical alternative to the competing ideological programs of American free market capitalism and Soviet-style communism. His central thesis was that this global transformation required immense capital investment, guided by meticulous, long-term scientific planning. It is in this context that he turns, with deliberate intellectual craft, Parkinson's, rather than dismissing it as mere satire. Blackett paid Parkinson the ultimate scientific compliment. He took his law seriously. He acknowledged its popular resonance and conceded that it captured a real phenomenon. Then, he proceeded to subject it to the cold, clarifying lens of operational research. He translated Parkinson's literary observation into the language of mathematics, proposing a rudimentary model to explain the inexorable growth of administrative staff. He posited that the primary driver of this growth was internal communication. In an organization of n staff members, the number of potential pairs individuals who might need to communicate with one another is proportional to n squared. Blackett suggested, therefore, that the self-generated workload, and thus the demand for new staff, might grow not linearly with the size of the organization, but exponentially. The rate of change of staff over time, what a physicist would term dN/dt, could be seen as being proportional to n squared. In this single, elegant maneuver, Blackett transformed Parkinson's law from a cynical joke into a differential equation. The purpose of this analytical co-option was twofold. First, it domesticated the problem by framing bureaucratic bloat as a predictable, modelable phenomenon. Blackett stripped it of its mysterious and seemingly intractable nature. It ceased to be an incurable aspect of human nature and became a systems dynamics problem with a potential systems dynamics solution. Second, and more importantly, it served as a powerful rhetorical pivot. Blackett argued that if such internal inefficiencies could be modelled, they could also be managed. The disease of Parkinson's law, he implied, was a symptom of unplanned, chaotic growth. The cure was the very thing he was advocating throughout his address: the application of rational, scientific planning. He used Parkinson's popular idea as a foil to demonstrate the absolute necessity of the approach. If even a simple administrative office could spiral into inefficiency without quantitative oversight, he argued, how could a nation possibly hope to industrialize or a global community hope to eliminate poverty without a far more sophisticated and comprehensive scientific plan? Parkinson's law, in Blackett's hands, became exhibit in the case for a new era of technocratic governance. The reception and legacy of Blackett's analysis reveal much about the enduring tensions in our understanding of human systems. In the immediate term, the address solidified his position as one of Britain's foremost public intellectuals, a powerful advocate for science as an instrument of social policy. He succeeded in elevating the discussion, demonstrating to an audience of his peers how the tools of hard science could be brought to bear on the seemingly soft problems of management and economics. His approach, however, was a product of its time and carries with it the distinct flavour of high modernist scientism. The critique of Blackett's model is, in essence, a return to the spirit of Parkinson's original insight. By reducing organisational growth to a mathematical formula based on communication pathways, Blackett's model necessarily omits the very human motivations that Parkinson found so central: the desire for prestige, the building of personal empires, the political manoeuvring for influence and resources. These are variables that resist easy quantification. His neat equation brilliantly explains a mechanism of growth but fails to capture the cynical intent that so often fuels it. The model is an elegant simplification that mistakes a symptom for the root cause. Nonetheless, the intellectual lineage of Blackett's 1958 analysis is profound and undeniable. His attempt to model organizational dynamics, however rudimentary, was a vital precursor to the more complex systems thinking that would emerge in the following decades. Thinkers like J. Forrester at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology would later develop sophisticated computer simulations of corporate, urban, and global systems, all of which owe an intellectual debt to the foundational or principles Blackett championed. His address stands as a landmark in the history of the effort to apply scientific rationality to societal management. It represents the high-water mark of postwar technocratic optimism, a belief that a better world could be engineered with the same precision and confidence as a bridge or a power station. The direct influence of Parkinson on Blackett is clear. The satirist provided the problem statement. The direct influence of Blackett's response was to legitimize this type of problem as a valid subject for rigorous, quantitative inquiry, paving the way for future generations of management scientists and systems theorists. In conclusion, Patrick Blackett's 1958 engagement with Parkinson's law was far more than a passing reference in a formal address. It was a calculated and deeply revealing intellectual act. By taking a piece of popular satire and recasting it as a mathematical problem, Blackett performed a powerful demonstration of his own worldview. He transmuted the base metal of literary cynicism into the gold of a solvable scientific puzzle. This act was central to his broader argument for a world managed by reason, data, and meticulous planning, a world where the vagaries of human irrationality could be understood, modelled, and ultimately guided toward productive ends. The encounter between Blackett's rigorous, quantitative optimism and Parkinson's worldly, Anecdotal skepticism encapsulates a fundamental and enduring dialectic in the study of human institutions. It is the perpetual tension between the elegant, predictable universe of our models and the messy, complex, and often profoundly illogical reality of human behaviour, while Parkinson bequeathed to posterity an unforgettable diagnosis of our institutional follies. Blackett, in his momentous 1958 address, offered a powerful, if ultimately partial, prescription, one rooted in an unshakable and profoundly consequential faith in the promise of the scientific enterprise.
We really appreciate you tuning in to this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.